Hello, and welcome to our workshop on digital humanism, AI, and ethics. Whether you're here because these principles reflect your own values or simply because you want to stay up to date, we are very pleased to have you here with us. We invited computer scientists from academia and practice based here in Vienna, who all have dealt with ethical questions in their work in one way or the other. I'm looking forward to insightful presentations on the different perspectives of theory and hands-on experience. I'll keep it short. My name is Kathleen Jimenez, and I connect businesses with research groups at TU Wien, Austria's largest university in the field of technology and natural sciences. It is my pleasure to co-moderate this session with Georg from the Vienna Business Agency, and we as hosts hope to promote a future of digital business where artificial intelligence is advanced according to the needs of humanity and seen in light of its real-world consequences. Enjoy the session, and I hand over to you, Georg.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. My name is Georg Sedelbauer. I work for the Vienna Business Agency. Our mission is to promote businesses in Vienna, to help businesses to come to Vienna, to foster innovation, to foster R&D in Vienna. Today's topic is very important to us. That's why I'm so happy that we have so many people joining us. About the workshop today, there will be a Q&A session after each presentation. You can use the chat for asking questions, for commenting presentations. Already ask questions during the presentation and don't wait till the end of the presentation. My colleague Kathleen, she will collect all the questions and ask them after the presentation. We will start with an academic point of view. We have two researchers from TU Wien, from the Technical University of Vienna as speakers. Our first speaker is Julia Neidhardt. Julia Neidhardt is a researcher at the e-commerce group of TU Wien. Her work focuses on modeling complex individual behavior, such as collaboration in online games. But she's also one of the authors of the Vienna Manifesto on Digital Humanism. And in her presentation, she will explain what digital humanism is and why we actually need it. Julia, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction. And so I start sharing my screen. Okay, yes, thank you for the invitation to talk about digital humanism and to introduce our initiative. So what is the background? If we look at modern society, we see that the digital transformation shows that informatics is everywhere. So it's important for innovation, growth, and wealth. And yeah, we see that it has a direct or indirect impact on almost everything. So in informatics, so the discipline is very fundamental because we develop methods, abstract methods, but also artifacts. And if we look at the last years, the decades, we see how it changed. So we had a personal computer, a standalone machine, but now it's a global operating system, so to say. Today, almost everything can become a computer, if you think about the Internet of Things, for example. So, and yeah, so this has a huge impact. And yeah, just to say it again, the digitalization has led to a lot of improvements in efficiency and convenience. It, yeah, for example, can save resources, increase productivity, or let people participate and also liberate people. However, of course, it has also a lot of downsides. And especially also to these rapid changes and rapid developments. And one example, if you think about the World Wide Web, it's today a global mega system with the tendency of monopoly. But at the beginning, there was the vision of freedom of information and giving people the chance to participate. However, it has led to today to an advertising-based business model where users pay with the data. So, and already Tim Berners-Lee is now saying, so he's the creator of the World Wide Web, that the system is failing. And also other pioneers of the web and the internet, kind of regret what is happening. So yeah, these are really reasons for concerns. But there are, a lot of other reasons. Here, just a few examples. So what is happening today and what is really challenging our society and our democracy. For example, how fake news, the whole dynamics impacts the discourse in society, or how humans are the subject of machine decision making. So that algorithms are rating people on and this face recognition technology. Then also the states. So there are companies that control communication and knowledge. So it's kind of loss of state sovereignty. Then also, of course, we can use all these technologies. So it can be a lot of misuse. For example, for surveillance and controls of people and their movements. And of course, we have these platforms and the monopolization tendency. So it's really a bundling of market power. So and the question is really which way to go. I mean, so there are different visions of the future, and one would be, like, I mean, here there are two books that kind of show these antagonistic views, where you would say, okay, we have a lot of chances that digitalization offers, and we can use them to really, for positive things. On the other hand, we have this. Which I already also mentioned, this misuse and this. Now this term surveillance capitalism, which was established by Zuboff, and this is a very good book. But we are at the crossroads, and the question is what to do and what can we do. And here is digital humanism is an initiative or an approach that wants to address these issues. So I just would like to mention about the background also of the manifesto. So we had this workshop 2 years ago at TU Wien, but already strongly supported by the city of Vienna and the funding agency WWTF. And so digital humanism, the term, it stems from Nida Rümelin. So he's a philosopher and politician in Munich. Was a politician. So, and it's a reference to humanism and enlightenment, according to which people are responsible for themselves, use their own thinking, and take center stage. However, for us, it means that digital humanism, we see it as an approach that describes, analyzes, but also tries to influence the complex interplay between technology and humanity for a society that fully respects universal human rights. So this is the background. And this workshop, back then, it was like the first bigger event here at TU Wien or in Vienna, with a very interdisciplinary setting and very international. So there were more than 100 participants from all kinds of disciplines, not only computer science, but also philosophy, history, but also political science, law, economics. So you see it here. We had here some topical foci, but however, so the main outcome there was the manifesto. Here you see a picture. It was 2 years ago. It's very nice. So we were really physically meeting back then still, and we're able to stay close together. So hopefully we will have the opportunity to do this soon again. However, so the main outcome of the workshop was this manifesto on digital humanism, which we see as a call for reflection and action. And it's addressed to science, but also broader to society and also to decision makers. And in this manifesto, we have the main concern, so that we want to shape technologies in accordance with human values and needs, instead of letting technologies shape us. So kind of we want to act. We have phrased there a number of core principles. Here just mention a few of them. So it's important that digital technology promotes democracy and inclusion, that fairness, responsibility, and transparency should be part of software programs and algorithms. So there needs to be also political action and intervention against tech monopolies, for example. Again, so the decisions affecting human rights must be made by humans. It's interdisciplinarity is a key principle, we think. Then also we see a special role of universities and also a special responsibility, because we do not have, so we can create knowledge and enhance critical thinking. We do not have other interests like business interests. Then there needs to be a dialogue with society. And also we should, in the academic teaching, foster more interdisciplinarity. So this manifesto was signed by a lot of people, really more than 1,000. It was translated into several languages, and we have a lot of follow-up activities. Now we identified 9 topic clusters, just to give you an idea. So we have automation work, participation, society, skill, then this complex AI, ethics, philosophy, then fake news, echo chambers, communication, democracy, tech giants, platforms, regulation, then also privacy, surveillance, and human rights, education, skills, then also this digital politics and geopolitics. And the last thing I want to mention is this system resilience versus efficiency, and also participation, democracy. So these are kind of, so it's more, it's not only the focus on AI ethics, so it's very broad. And then we have a lot of events. One I would like to mention, we have this DICUM lecture series, which is an online lecture series to discuss these different aspects related to the topic clusters. We have very renowned international speakers there typically, and it's already since last summer and since June, and almost every 2 weeks now. And so the next event would be on May 18th. So it's about platform economy. And it's a lot of things happening now around this digital humanism, especially in Vienna. And I really would like to emphasize this, because we had from the very beginning the support of the city of Vienna and also the funding agency, and there were now some research calls. So the first one was already in 2019 by the city of Vienna, where more than 70 proposals were submitted, 9 research projects funded. Then there is last year from the WWTF, where 99 proposals were submitted. So all projects that have ideas to bring these principles forward. So there will be the announcement who got the funding soon. However, another thing which is really also remarkable, that digital humanism has been named as one major research area in both the program of the Austrian government as well as in the program of the new city government of Vienna. So it's really this term is really broadly used, and there is really a commitment also for politics to go this direction. Just want to point you to our DICUM platform, where you can read about the manifestos, read about current events, but also look what happened in the past. So we have the slides are available. We have a YouTube channel where you see videos of all events. And then also we have a book project, which will go online also now in May, where we have 45 international contributions to the topics I mentioned, and also where the ideas are developed, how we could put them into action. So so the conclusion: technology is not magic. It does not come from nowhere. It reflects specific interests and points of views. There is a need to understand and to reflect it, but very important, we can and must actively participate and create technology. And very, very good that Vienna has established itself as an international center for digital humanism. However, so we are at the crossroads, and we have really to think what to do. So thank you very much. So now if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Super. Thank you, Julia Neidhardt. Yes, there is one question in the chat. Good morning. How can one attend the lectures of TU regarding digital humanism?
Yes, so here you see the link to this platform. We have provided there. It's also on Zoom. The Zoom, the access code or the link, and then also you can watch it on YouTube. It's also live streamed on YouTube. You find all the information there. So everything what is happening around this initiative is just really now on this platform. And just to mention it again, look at it if you're interested now later in May, where we will have these 45 articles about digital humanism topics from really researchers all over the world and all different disciplines. Yeah.
So here the invitation, join the lectures.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe one more question. It seems from the chat, it seems that in EU there is a lot of talk about regulation, while outside of Europe, our digital world is created by tech giants. Is regulation the way?
Yeah, so I mean, it's in our opinion, there needs to be some regulation. I mean, it's also in regulation, it's also a political question. So it goes beyond like individual researchers that try to incorporate ethical perspectives, because we think it also needs, it's a societal question, it's a political question, and also political actions have to be taken. So yeah, in the end, regulations are required. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Julia Neidhardt. Maybe later you can also post this link in the public chat on the B2Match.
I will, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Georg?
So we come to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Martin Kamper, also from TU Wien. He's a senior scientist there at the Computer Vision Lab. His research interests are machine vision and machine learning applied to ambient assisted living and visual surveillance and robotics. And this often leads to ethical questions. And in his talk, in this presentation, he will focus on ethical questions in AI. Martin, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. It's a great pleasure to talk or to give a short presentation on AI and ethics. And yeah, I'm doing computer vision, so that means quite a number of our applications got already a bad reputation when it comes to ethical questions. Let me talk about things. First, I hope you see my slides, that it works. So I would like to start with a with a slide on how someone might learn from data. This is a slide which shows that the divorce rate in Maine correlates with the per capita consumption of margarine in the years 2000 until 2009, and it's upon you to answer the question if that is a sensible learning from data. So I have to say, but what we currently are doing is that most of our projects deal with data-driven approaches, and when it comes to visual computing, computer vision, up to 70–80% of our current research deals with AI and deep learning. So there are well-known examples when our technologies fail. I won't go into details, but it is well known that racist algorithms exist that, for example, like Asian faces were not detected correctly. Even that's a case from 2010 already, or which is maybe more famous is the North Point predicting crime software, which basically does a racist classification, but these are well-known examples. It's also Google Translate, which has a gender bias, but it's still the case that he works and she cooks, and well, that's in the software more or less, even though that Google Translate does a lot against gender bias. Since we are in Austria, I have to mention this AMS unemployment classification algorithm. That is an algorithm that divides job seekers into 3 groups, reflecting their chances into the labor market. Yeah? Such algorithms might be intransparent and have a high risk of discrimination. So handle with care, I would say. So What is bias? Bias is a prejudice for or against something or somebody that may result in unfair decisions. That's the definition from the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI. Bias leads to unfair and discriminatory outcomes, and especially when it comes to visual computing. Visual computing does a lot of problems in this area. We have like two groups of bias. It's bias from data. That is maybe more well known. AI systems are based on machine learning, data-driven techniques. A predominant way to inject bias is the collection and selection of training data. The second group, also very important, but maybe less known, is the algorithmic bias. For example, a search algorithm ignoring competitive outcomes. Transparency entails the capability to describe, inspect, and reproduce the mechanisms through which AI systems make decisions and learn to adapt to their environments. Transparency is a key to building and maintaining citizens' trust in the developers of AI systems. We see two groups of transparency, which is technological transparency and business model transparency. The first one implies that AI systems be audible, comprehensible, and intelligible by human beings at varying levels of comprehension and expertise. Business model transparency means that human beings are knowingly informed of the intention of the developers and technology implementers of AI systems. That comes from the recommendations of the Council on Artificial Intelligence, which is from the OECD legal instruments. And as a third group, it's about explainability. AI's training methods and decision criteria may not be understood and may not be readily available for challenge and validation by human operators. So there are three design principles for AI systems with explainability. For researching and attempting to use the simplest and most interpretable model possible for the application in question, assessing whether it is possible to analyze, change, and update training and testing data, and assessing whether interpretability can be examined after the model's training and development. So, as someone who works in the area where we deal with learning algorithms, I have like a couple of ad hoc learning problems. For example, the first one is that when you look at an image, there is no background knowledge available. So if you look at the forest of the two images with the needles and the forest, you see the difference that for the forest or the left picture, there is context, there is background. Usually when you look at an image only, there is no background knowledge available. There is some information missing. Then when you look at data, it's usually a conclusion from the past to the future. Acquired data reflects the past. So frequent update of training data is necessary. Then we have the problem of catastrophic forgetting. That means lacks the ability to generalize. Then we have many images with pets and dogs, but we don't have any images with car accidents when people get injured. And that's exactly what we want to learn. And at the fifth point, collecting images, for example, representing men and women in a stereotypic way leads to machine learning results representing men and women in a stereotypic way. When you look at the project design and current machine learning project design, there I would like to focus on 5 points. When I looked at the same problem like maybe 10, 15 years ago, we had like 1/3 of the effort. We had a specification phase, then we had an implementation phase, and the third phase was basically experiment and evaluation. Now I think it's a little bit different. We have to start with learning about the discipline. We have to learn about the data we would like to acquire, and then we have like 40–50% of the time spent in such a project is on the data acquisition process. Yeah, and then we come to the data analysis, which basically is the implementation of the system or of the algorithm. And then we have a phase which is the refinement evaluation. Yeah, currently there is hardly any ethical activities involved, and I added them like for the first one, build on human-centric approach. How much time do we like to spend on that effort? Or when we learn about the data, do we respect all applicable laws and regulations when it comes to the data analysis part? Do we should maximize the benefits for AI systems, while at the same time we should prevent and minimize their risks. When it comes to the refinement phase, do we align with standards and norms around AI ethics? A lot of is said about the problems and about ethical problems of AI technology, but how do we solve it? Yeah, I would like to show you this slide, how we might address fairness of algorithms. I have these 3 phases. The pre-processing stage focus on the data, on the input data. We want to understand the data used for model creation. This can be done by explainable features, bias estimation of the data or the data description. When we look at the model itself, that is the in-processing step. Usually we talk about black box models, but maybe there is a chance to find inherently explainable models. That can be done by architectural adjustment, regularization, trend prediction, explanation. And if you look at the output in the third phase, we look at the output of such a project or of such a development phase, it's the post-processing state. There we look to find post hoc explanations. So that can be done by backward propagation or proximal. So one overlook how we could address fairness algorithms, and of course each step has its own solutions to the problem. There are a few AI ethics rules and regulations in Europe, and that's good that we have that. And I would like to recommend the one from Malta towards trustworthy AI. I like it a lot because it has just a couple of pages on one hand, but on the other hand, it gives a very concrete certification scheme how to address bias and fairness in AI and in AI algorithms development. And now I would like to come to views from the developer. I used to be a developer myself. Now I'm a teacher, and collected a few views what the developer might think during the design and development process. This might be a little bit provocative, but there's a reason why I do it in this way. So like fairness might be seen that it is nice to have, we like to have it, but it is not, we do not actively follow it. We do not want to mix it up with balanced data because that's a technical problem that is solved. Yeah, we know that the solution is not fair, but someone might say, okay, it's for us, we are European, male, high income, so we are on the safe side, we don't care. The second view of the developer concerning bias. Yeah, we know that there is bias, but there are no standardized processes to avoid bias. It is unavoidable because for most of the problems, there is no big data. We work on small data. We are happy for any data set we get. And bias is less accepted than fairness. And we say we build technology for our society. So again, we are on the safe side. And the third view, maybe from a developer, maybe hopefully not, it's about transparency. There is no transparency, especially for non-experts. So we spend a lot of time, we studied the problem, so we are able to understand. So we spent a lot of effort to do that, to be able to do that. It is okay that design is not transparent. It keeps our salaries high. So we are the one you have to approach if you really want to understand it. Maybe a more serious point is that transparency does not protect our IPRs. That might be true. This is something we have to discuss. And the fifth point, transparency makes our algorithm less accurate. Also, that might be true. So we also have to discuss that point. So as a summary, a developer does not care about fairness or transparency of his or her algorithms. The main goal of a developer is to build robust algorithms to have high accuracy. So we would like to have the correct reply from the machine. We spend our time on user interfaces. The system should be easy to use. We want algorithms which are scalable, and we would like to process a high amount of data. So this topic is not on the list of his or her main achievement seen as a developer. So what is my message? We have to raise awareness towards fairness, bias, and transparency of learning algorithms. I think that is really important, and the time is now. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Martin Kamper, and also for this clear message. We have a few questions, very critical thinking questions here. I'll just read them out loud. With AI and ethics research, are you trying to alleviate the garbage in, garbage out problem? After all, isn't the problem that people don't understand statistics?
Good questions, difficult answer. I think it's not that simple. I mean, garbage in, garbage out is right, but it's not so easy to say what is garbage, you know. So I think it's a rather complicated problem, and we have to spend a lot of time, and we have to bundle our research activities to identify the garbage and the non-garbage. Yeah, so it's a complex task. I think this is a short answer, and it's not that simple. Just make a better input, and then you have a good output. Because there is also, as I said in my presentation, there is hardly any, no one is sensible to the problem. So what is garbage? I have to say in this way. It's not that easy. The second question was,
after all, isn't the problem that people don't understand statistics?
well, no, I don't think so. Well, we as technicians like to say it's so complicated and a lot of people believe us. I don't think it is. I mean, we have to think about a way to explain things in a way that everyone is understanding it. For example, I have a project where I work with people with dementia and we apply AI technologies. And I have to answer the question, how can I explain it to people, yeah, who even can't understand what I want to tell them. So this is again a difficult question, but it is our task to explain it, and it is our task to deliver technology which is understandable. I think that's our task. I can't say it's too complicated. Sorry, that's not the way. That's not the solution.
So you see the responsibility with you as developer,
yes, especially as a teacher, that we have to raise awareness to our students that they have a feeling for it, and they also would like that they want to build technologies and algorithms which are understandable and explainable.
Maybe one short question. In your point of view or with your experience, who defines fairness?
That's again very difficult question with a complex answer. I think it's the society. Yeah, I mean, it is everyone. Of course, we have to discuss with the end users and all the people who have to deal with our algorithms. For many cases, that's the society. But yeah, it's everyone who gets into contact with it, and that's the society.
Okay, thank you, Martin Kampel.
Thank you.
So now we come to the next presentation. We come to a very interesting project about ethical certification of AI-based applications. IEEE, the world's largest technical professional organization, initiated the ethics certification program for autonomous and intelligent systems. And this certification program was implemented in Vienna at the Wiener Stadtwerke. Wiener Stadtwerke is a public utility company that belongs to the city of Vienna. And in the next presentation, we will hear about more the certification program and how it was put into practice. For this presentation, we will have two speakers. Clara Neppel from IEEE. She is the Senior Director for European Business Operations. And then she will hand over to Dietmar Schabus from Wiener Stadtwerke. After a career as a researcher, he joined the Wiener Stadtwerke as a data scientist. Clara, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction, and also thank you for the invitation to present here. It is really my great pleasure to present this pilot project that we have with the city of Vienna and the Wiener Stadtwerke, and under this umbrella of digital humanism, which, as I explained yesterday in my keynote, very much aligns with our tagline of advancing technology for humanity. My apologies, I don't seem to be able to, okay, yes, now to forward my presentation. Okay, so our tagline is advancing technology for the benefit of humanity. And we are, as was mentioned, one of the biggest technical organizations in the world. And since 5 years, we have our European headquarters in Vienna, which is an excellent choice, as it turns out. Of course, one of the focus areas is really to engage European members in global initiatives and the other way around. So it is also, AI is of course one of our focus areas, with a lot of conferences and also technical standards that we've been developing. And of course, one of the important questions is what we just heard before, is how to engage the community. So as Martin mentioned before, technologies primarily think about or thought about performance. And this luckily changed. So we started an initiative which is called Ethically Aligned Design more than 5 years ago, which involved the technical community with the large society, if you want so with philosophers, doctors, and so on, and to see what are actually the consequences of our technology in society, and to come up also with some very concrete ideas, which some of the ideas of proposals come to us, so it are directed to the technical community, and other proposals which are for governments, policymakers, and so on. So this ethically aligned design is now in its fourth version. So we had different iterations, if you want so, and it is really covering. You can download it if you Google it, ethically aligned design from IEEE. It's covering basically definitions of ethics to different sectors such as effective computing and so on. And we were involving also from the beginning the businesses. So we have a special community on ethically aligned design for businesses. And for instance, one of the big questions for businesses is, where are you in this AI ethics framework? So you can be lagging, where the employees are more or less left behind with their ethical dilemmas, or you can be leading, where the ethics is embedded in your business strategy. So this is also some of the, I think, the first questions that businesses have to ask when they are confronted with this question. And of course, it was already mentioned, we are also participating in a lot of policy discussions. We were a member of this high-level expert group on AI in the EU. We are working with the OECD, with the Council of Europe, on what needs to be defined as a red line, which kind of mechanism, governance mechanism, needs to be put in place in order to make the AI ecosystem more trustworthy. And I would just like to mention now the draft regulation on AI from the European Union, which actually defines risk in a new way. So as we know, technologists, the risk was defined until now as a safety or a security problem. Now we have a new risk, which is defined there as the risk to fundamental rights. And it is even defined that there are some applications which are unacceptable, such as social scoring systems or manipulating people. So I think that this is really a novel approach. And it is also interesting that the regulator recognized that this is such a fast-moving technology that you cannot actually define a lot of things from the beginning. So it left a lot to technical standards. So it left a lot to us to engage with you, or bringing the communities together, and to define exactly what does it mean if we say we want a system to be transparent. And they're also defined that for high-risk applications, there are some mandatory horizontal requirements, such as which have to be undergo to conformity assessments procedure. Even for limited risk applications, there are some transparency obligations. And for minimal risk applications, they are also suggesting voluntary code of conduct. So I think it is very relevant for all businesses to look into this matter in the future. And basically coming back to IEEE, so our proposal basically to set up this framework is really through standards, certification, and governance framework. So we started to develop basically in the same time as we started developing the ethically aligned design framework, also some standards. So besides our technical standards at Wi-Fi, we started developing so-called social technical standards, which, for instance, look into how to embed values into the design process, which was mentioned before, which developers can take into account then later on when they are developing a system, to certification, which we come to later on, and through governance framework. And I think that's important to involve then cities like the city of Vienna, businesses, and so on in this endeavor. Just to give you an example, just because it was mentioned before, some standards examples here, standards for a model process for addressing ethical concerns during system design, but also for assessing the impact of the autonomous intelligent systems on well-being, for instance, or federated machine learning, responsible AI licensing for different data models, for instance. These are the kind of examples that you can also find under the link that I provided here below. So coming to the ethical certification process. Basically, the key objectives were to develop smart criteria for assessing ethical properties. And the focus here is really on ethical. So of course, other technical questions are covered by other standards and certification processes. So when we talk about ethical, we first focused on 3 dimensions, on accountability, algorithmic bias, and transparency. And this seems to be also the most important things that we have mentioned before as well. We start developing and also finishing a 4th suite, which is on privacy. We focus on foundational ethical criteria. So foundational means that they are horizontal. They can be used in any sector, but can be refined to that sector. And of course, it is important to develop the whole ecosystem of conformity assessment and certification. So we need assessors, we will need certification bodies who are doing these jobs. And we need, of course, a design authority such as IEEE to develop this criteria further. The value proposition is basically that the certification is one basis for trust in products and services. And we need independent scrutiny because internal ethical boards are not transparent towards the outside. So in a B2B ecosystem, we need to have the transparency of what actually means with ethical design inside a company. It identifies strengths and shortfalls, and it also demonstrates duty of care. What is also important, because it evolves so quickly, the technology, is to be adaptive and agile. So actually, the assessment effort is proportionate to the risk profile. The risk profile is determined before, and then there is a subset of the criteria which applies to that given service, product, and service. And we also developed a new model-based approach, which you can see here. It's basically graphical as well, and it permits a rapid tailoring to the needs of the sector. So for instance, we were able to develop a criteria for contact tracing applications within 2 months. And of course, it is also important to demonstrate the implementation towards the proposed EU draft regulation and other regulations in the world. And very quickly, just what it means in terms of process. So basically, it starts with the project inquiry and project initiation. We will require a concept of operation, some material about the product and service. As I mentioned, there is a risk analysis which defines the ethical, so the risk profile, and which also determines then the appropriate set of criteria, and of course the required evidence. Of course, the client will be supported in the process and product alignment. All should be submitted in a standardized way, which we call case for ethics, to the assessment panel. The panel will get feedback, and the end will be a full or partial certificate of conformity with applicable constraints, depending on what the current status of the product and service is. And with this, I would like to hand over to Dietmar to tell us his personal experience as well as of the Wiener Stadtwerke with the pilot project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clara. My name is Dietmar Schabus. I'm with Wiener Stadtwerke, and I will spend a few minutes trying to give you an impression of what it meant for us to go through this certification program in this pilot cooperation that we have together with IEEE. Clara didn't mention yet that the official launch of the program will be later this year, so it's not fully out there yet, but it's very mature, I would say. So we went through it, and I will tell you how it felt for us. But first, I will try and tell you a little bit about who we are, because we have a very international audience and not everybody knows Wiener Stadtwerke. This is a utility group owned by the city of Vienna for 100%, and we provide services to the city in several areas, but the 2 main pillars are mobility, so public transport, parking, mobility services with more than 1,000 kilometers of rail network in the city, and energy on the other hand, so electricity, gas, district heating. We operate several power plants in the city, and there's more than 30,000 kilometers of energy network in the city. And of course, we have a lot of people that we interact with. We transport more than 1 billion passengers from A to B every year, and we have more than 2 million energy customers. So we are also, as you can see from these numbers, we need to be a fairly large organization ourselves. We have more than 15,000 employees. And as any large organization today, we are looking at use cases of artificial intelligence and related concepts with great interest, and we have a lot of initiatives going on and pilot projects and proofs of concepts, etc. And we also have a few topics where we are really proud that we managed to advance them to a more mature level, where we think about using them in actual real-life production use. And one of those is the use case that we selected for the cooperation together with IEEE to walk through this ethical certification procedure. And I will tell you about the use case next. This is an AI categorization of customer requests. It's a prototype system that we are proud to have developed completely in-house with our own know-how only. I have, as was mentioned in the introduction, an AI research background myself, and I was heavily involved here and wrote most of the code. And this prototype system has the task of looking at the more than 1,000 emails and letters that we receive from customers every day, and to try and assign it to every inquiry to a category. So it's actually, from a machine learning AI perspective, it's a very simple task. We have a text classification system happening here. And in the further down the pipeline, every inquiry will reply to by a human operator. So this is important also from the ethical perspective, that the job of the AI system here is not to reply to the inquiries or do anything in a super fully automatic way. It's really guaranteed that every request will receive a response from a human operator. But we try to use AI here to speed up our internal processes and especially improve the response times from the perspective of the customer also. So this is useful because we have specialized teams at the end who will look at different categories. So this is the use case. I hope it's understandable from this super short and super high level description. Because next I want to talk about what we actually had to do to go through this certification procedure. This was actually over the course of several months. We were in close contact with a group of 5 international experts from IEEE. And here are in this table, you see, based on the high level, the 5 steps that were also partially mentioned by Clara with a different focus. So here is the focus maybe more on what do we need to do, or did we need to do as a company? At first, we had the task of providing a comprehensive explanation of what we did. So the developed system, the goals, scope, and constraints of the project, who are the stakeholders, what processes and which people are affected by the whole thing. So we give a lot of detail, also very technical detail, and very all around, to IEEE to make them understand what it is that we're doing. And next happened the risk assessment. And luckily for our particular use case, it was decided that this use case was at low risk for ethical problems. So, and next the criteria set was selected that is most applicable to this or most relevant to this use case. The decision was made for accountability. So these things are all easy. And then comes the tough part where the criteria set really is a list of, in this case, 43 criteria that we needed to provide evidence for, to show how we dealt with specific things. I will give examples in a minute, but I think it's fair to say here, it's no secret that this is quite some work to do. So this is something that took us several months, not full-time work, of course, but I think it can be argued that this is justified. Because if you think about yourself not as a company but as a citizen, it's if the ethical certification procedure is something that a company can complete in one afternoon, then it's maybe not very worthwhile for society to enforce it. And we've completed this, and we handed all this back over to IEEE, and IEEE is in the process of assessing the provided evidence. We have some feedback from the experts already, and it's looking very good that we will get through with the certification. Now I have some examples here, and I think it's good to know that the examination that takes place is very holistic. So it looks at some very technical, very specific topics of the use case, but also at things that are more related to the organization that runs it, and touches on governance topics, etc. So here are 6 examples on the left, more technical ones that maybe deal more with the use case and the system, such as error analysis, where we needed to demonstrate our ability to do a proper meaningful error analysis and also show the documented results to IEEE. We had to show how we did hyperparameter tuning. So this is a very technical term familiar to everybody who works in machine learning, I suppose. And also how we deal with false positives. So it was required that we have some sort of dashboard system that shows when does it happen that the system does something wrong, and also how do we deal with this. So this is not just about the technicalities of the system, but already about how do we deal it within the process of the organization. On the right, you have examples that are more governance related, that focus maybe more on the organization, such as the requirement for adopting a layered approach to oversight of the use case and to responsibility and to accountability, right? Who is in charge? And if that person isn't there, who's in charge then? And stuff like that. The topic of avoiding inaction, delay, and indifference. So here we needed to show that we have procedures in place for a timely response when something goes wrong. And the general value of human authority and autonomy is very important. So when and where is human intervention needed, and who does it, who's in charge, and what exactly are they doing? These are things that we wrote some text for and provided to IEEE and received feedback from the experts. So that's just a very short glimpse, and we are really happy that we have the feeling that we did it, we completed this task. But on the other hand, this is really just the beginning, because it was also very helpful in the feedback that we received from the experts, that there's some things that we can still improve. And also this is really just the one use case, right, that you certify. So you're not being certified as an organization and this is it for the rest of time. You need to look at every application that you're trying to put to use and afresh, but this is also justified, I would say. So thanks very much, and we are happy to take some questions if there's time.
Thank you, Dietmar Schabus and Clara Nepper, for the glimpse into the projects of IEEE and Wiener Stadtwerke, the service provider here in Vienna. We have 2 questions. As AI models are often only a small part of larger systems, how do we make sure the whole system from AI prediction to human action is ethical?
Maybe I can answer first, and Clara sure will add something. So I would argue that this is also part of what I called here the holistic view. So it's not just about the AI models and not just about how did you train your things, but how does everything interplay with other IT systems? For example, in our use case, we have interconnections with other IT systems that are not AI based, but this is of course important for ethical evaluation, and also not just IT systems, but also the processes, the organization. So I think IEEE, from my perspective, IEEE did a very good job in thinking of all the things that are relevant and asking you very specifically, how did you think about this? How did you think about it? Where can I read what your thoughts are, etc. So this is what I would argue. The holistic examination is very important here.
Yeah, so I can also add to that, well, I would just like to, of course, add that there are, specifically for ethics certification, there were specific concepts which were defined, which drive, let's say, the attainment of, ethical alignment, such, for instance, for algorithmic bias. Some of the drivers are indeed organizational governance or the clarity of operations, also context alignment. So it is important to take the context into account, while also some inhibitors are taken into account. For instance, again, for algorithmic bias, the lack of process transparency is an inhibitor. So these are the kind of things where we take this life cycle of AI development and deployment into account.
Okay, thank you. We actually have one more question on this, but maybe we can come back to that as we're running out of time. Georg, please.
Okay, thank you. Now we come to the next part. We will see how SMEs and startups will deal with the issue of ethics in AI. We will start with the company Cogvis. They are focusing on fall detection and prevention in nursing homes. They're using computer vision and AI for doing this. This company was founded in 2007 in Vienna. And Michael Brandstetter, he's one of the founders of Cogvis. And he will present how they address ethical issues in their company. The floor is yours, Michael.
So, hello. Hello, yeah, my name is Michael Brandstetter. Thanks for the invitation to present here what we did in terms of ethics and AI. We are in the B2B market and we provide, or we want to contribute to the future of human care relations by addressing currently two problems. The one is aging society and the related implications in care. So we have basically, we try to tackle two situations here. The one is fall detection, as already was mentioned, which has already a very high impact on our healthcare costs as such, and is affecting a lot of people age 65 plus. And the second topic which developed over the course of being in this market is related to dementia. Again, is on the rise, has even a much, much higher impact on the global healthcare and societal costs. And yeah, we were looking, or we wanted to develop solutions how to support that. And the second problem we are facing right now is on the staff side. So we have an acute staff shortage already today, with in Western societies 2 million open care jobs at the moment, and also in Austria you might know the numbers. So by 2030 we need thousands of new staff, additional staff, because of also the retirement of the baby boomer generation. Yeah? And this already leads now to a high workload, burnouts of nurses, and generally an unattractive job situation. Yeah? And there was, when we started that, very little activity going on to help nurses in their daily work. Yeah? So we have a lot of technologies addressing doctors, doing diagnostics and so on. But there was actually nothing really trying to help the nurses in their daily work. Yeah? And that's what we developed. So we can detect human behavior in a room, which is addressing various standard monitoring the nurses have to do, also related to administrative tasks. So we want to take over some of this work from the nurses to free them and give them some more time for really the compassionate tasks they have to do in a nursing home, for instance. Yeah? And we did that by developing a sensor. It's based on a special sensor technology, 3D data, which we process on this sensor and provide the nurses with the information they need. And of course, this has a lot of implications in terms of ethics and AI. And I want to address that now and look at the three categories, I would say. That's bias, transparency of AI, and accountability. And how we see that for our company, for our solution, and how we deal with that. For coming to the first category, bias, I think there is generally some semblance of control, meaning that we know what to do, we know how to handle it, we know how to address it. And if you look a little bit closer, how you can structure the problem about bias, we see three areas. The one is what is in the data itself you're collecting and processing. So how are the data are collected? That has implications on the bias. And very important is also how you select this data for your purposes. Yeah? In terms of bias in the data itself, as I mentioned, we have a special technology. It was chosen also to have privacy by design in the data we are using, and also that the fairness by design is already very much included, meaning that we don't process any protected attributes like religion, social economic status, and so on. So it's purely about the behavior, silhouettes of persons. We can't distinguish anything in terms of gender, race, age, and so on. Yeah? But of course, you can have other biases, for instance, people using a walker or a wheelchair compared to people who don't need that yet. Yeah? So it doesn't matter how much you take care about that, you will, at some point in time, you will face that. And you need to think about how to deal with that. Yeah? But from the basic point of view, we are already on the safe side in the way which data we are using. The second one is how you select your data sources. This is mainly related to what you will have in the end for development in your training and test databases. Again, there are two dimensions in a way, so that you use the sources you are using, and that all the situations are equally represented. So you need to look for a unified sampling of the data. For us, that means should come from various facilities, hospitals, long-term care facilities, senior residences. So there's a lot of variation then again where we can apply our technology, and you need to try to get your data from all this, because the modus operandi they have might be different, and so that's important. And the second one is that, of course, we want to detect certain incidents in the data, and they also need to be represented in a balanced way. Meaning that you have a lot of daily activities, which compared to very seldom occurring faults, for instance, yeah, and how you balance that to come up with a good solution. Because in the end, what bias means is that if you don't take care about that, in my opinion, we will generate customers which don't get the desired product. Yeah? So that's very important. The third one is bias during data selection. So that's related to your staff and the relation you have between the management and your staff, because of course the way which data you use has a direct effect on the product performance you have and you can provide. But in the end, you will recognize if something is wrong when we come to accountability of the systems. Yeah? But basically, staff needs to have a lot of knowledge about the domain you're in. They need to understand the problem and have a lot of experience. So that takes time, especially for SME, to come up with that. It's an upfront investment you have to take there, and you need to be aware of that. Coming to the transparency, unfortunately, I would say there's only so much you can do. Again, when looking at the data collection part, I think that can be handled. You can inform your customers, you can have informed consents, ethical committee approvals, in our case, if it's more healthcare related. But the administrative overhead is again significant, leading to high costs at the beginning without any benefit in the first step, I would say, for an SME, because we operate in a niche market. So the data are not available by default, so you need to collect that, and that has implications on your costs. In terms of the algorithms itself, I think that's an open research topic. We're using convoluted neural networks, so the transparency part is not really solved. We do that by having a hybrid approach, using also conventional software processing methods, which checks the AI and things like that. But this is, you need to decide. It's very much depending on which kind of applications you have. Yeah? Last one is accountability and trustworthiness. I always say that's another word for quality control. So of course, it has a strong interdependence to bias, because if you don't have unified data samples, you won't be able to apply your technology in all areas you want to have it, maybe. So it needs a high quality of your training and test databases, and which is most critically is the real world performance. This will also give you the best sales argument for your solution, of course, but this is again very costly and shouldn't be underestimated. In our case, that meant that we just concluded processing 120,000 alarms with our customers, looking at what was the performance, what was the root cause for not performing, and so on. So again, a very significant investment for an SME. To my conclusion, I think ethics is closely related to the daily software development. At least you have to make it so with a small team. I think it's also maybe easier to implement it in a small team, which is in-house and not outsourced somewhere sitting, you don't have access. But in the end, it will lead definitely to a better product market fit. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Michael Brandstätter, for your perspective from an SME. We have one question in the public chat. I believe maybe you mentioned this, but how do you address the privacy aspects of patients?
The privacy aspect, I mean, it's in the data itself. It's about how you, which data you collect, and how you restrictify yourself in not taking everything which might be available, but only using that much which you really need to fulfill the customer need or to address the customer need. Yeah? So that needs some restraint on the company part, because yeah, more is maybe, you might think more is maybe better, but yeah, you need to really be able to argue which kind of a data you really need, and is there a lesser way of doing it with still achieving the same results.
So you limit yourself in just picking the data you need. There's one more.
Yeah, the one part, but the other part is, of course, that the data itself, as I mentioned, doesn't give us a lot of information in the beginning. Yeah.
Maybe one more question, just very quick. Did you already see adversarial attacks with clients? Did some learn how to move to trick the system into detecting, falling, and fighting?
Yes, of course, that happens. And this is a matter of digitalization in the market. So it needs training, it needs information for the patients as well as the nurses. So that's again difficult, because it's, in our case, it's so visible. Yeah, the people know, okay, there's a new device in my room. What does it do? Yeah, so need to be prepared to answer that questions. Yeah, so that happens quite a lot. Yeah.
There's one more question that came in the public chat. Maybe Michael Brandstätter, you can address them in the chat. I will send you the link.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Okay. I'll hand over to you, Georg. Thank you.
Thanks. The next presentation, and also the last one for this workshop, is by Lisa Smith. Lisa founded the company Prewave in 2017 in Vienna. Prewave is offering supply chain risk intelligence. But currently, Prewave, they are also working on a technology assessment tool for AI startups. I'm really excited to hear more about Prewave. Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you. Welcome to my presentation. As you've heard, we're an AI startup. So my presentation will really focus also on the perspective of startups on approaching the topic of AI and ethics, and particularly on what we do and how we see that. Maybe just first, very shortly, what are we doing? So we are a spin-off of the Technical University in Vienna, founded 2017, so almost 4 years old, and we are really busy in the supply chain risk area. So we have developed a technology that analyzes social media, but also news and blog data in more than 50 natural languages, and which detects and predicts risks from that data. So these are in particular disruption and sustainability risks in companies' supply chains. So our clients are typically companies in the manufacturing industry, in the automotive or electronics industry, who have more than thousands, up to 20,000 different suppliers all around the world. And we help them to understand what is happening in my supply chain by showing them, watch out, here is a demonstration happening, here's an explosion, a pollution incident. And this is basically the task of our technology that is basically built on AI methods. So natural language processing, a lot of classification and clustering is here behind. We combine supervised and unsupervised learning methods. This is really the core of our technology, what we call here pre-wave artificial intelligence. And we research on that first at the Technical University, and then now at pre-wave for more than 8 years. So we basically, in terms of a domain, we focus on all types of different events, ranging from social risks to financial risks, natural disasters, and so on. Just to give you an idea of, okay, let's say the domain we are working in is really very broad, and obviously also that has implications on the ethical risks that we see by, applying our technology. That's why we very early on actually started to think about what can we do in order to ensure that the technology we are building will be used for good. And on the other side, also the data we are generating. So we are generating warnings for all of these event types, and we're sending them out to thousands of users, that they are actually generated in an, let's say, a fair way, an ethically correct way, and that we can make sure that the data is as correct as possible and not biased or anything. Maybe just why do we think it's actually really important to look at the AI and ethics, particularly for startups. So why? Because startups are different maybe from, let's say, regular small and medium-sized companies, because they are really focused on scalability. That means for a long time they will be small probably, but everything is directed on building a product that can really grow immensely fast. Everyone since the COVID crisis, of course, knows the difference between exponential growth and linear growth. But let's say startups are really defined by looking for a path that enables them to grow super quickly. And the point I want to make here is that we think it's really important to look at or have some ethical considerations already in the beginning before you actually start scaling your technology and delivering to 10 times as many, 100 times, or even 1,000 times as many users. So you have to get it right really also in the first phase. But if this was really the differentiation between, okay, being a startup, growing, or then everyone would choose, of course, for this path. But in reality, actually, it looks more like this. There is a long time where you really just try and search for this product and the technology. How does it have to look like before you actually really start growing beyond this linear growth path? And in this period, for a startup, it's particularly important to generate trust. This is for us, let's say, the main motivation why we really early started to think about how can we make sure that the technology we develop really considers risks, or that we anticipate risks. In this phase where you're actually still small but looking for this repeatable solution, you of course need to make sure that you will not pop up in the news with something like you discriminated a certain user group or a certain group of society, that your technology has a bias and so on, because otherwise, especially when you're small, users will lose the trust. That applies the same as for clients. To hire the first 10 employees, you need to basically convince them that what you will build is great and that it will basically make the world a better place, so to say, simply speaking. So this is why trust plays a major role. The same for, of course, organizations where startups receive money from, like institutional investors or public funding agencies, but also other stakeholders in general. If you are, if there's some, let's say, NGO or a labor union basically fighting your application for one or the other reasons, then you will have a very hard time to generate this trust. So this is, let's say, the motivation. Why should we care? Yeah, we already heard that many developers don't care, but actually, as a startup founder, in particular, I do care because of these reasons. So what do we do? in order to basically consider ethical risks. So what we did in the beginning is we defined a code of ethics for our company, where we wrote down a set of rules which defines on what do we find important that happens with our technology or not. So we have this code of ethics. It's also published on our website, and basically every employee knows it, every shareholder of PreWave knows it. And the particular points here that we dealt with are data privacy and protection, and also how our data is distributed. So we always have these two sides on how do we define basically build our technology, and what are the rules like data privacy that we consider here, but also then what should happen to the data, because this is also an important issue here. We are dealing with risks like demonstrations, labor strike, bankruptcies, and of course we're generating here a new level of transparency of what is happening in the world. And imagine this data would come exclusively in the hands of one party. That could lead to negative effects that we can potentially not even foresee. So that's why we basically wrote down things like that we will engage in active data sharing, that we will make sure we try to distribute the data in a balanced way, both to commercial companies, but also to NGOs. And we have a part of that also available freely on the internet to establish a natural balance. And we also committed that we will not grant full exclusivity on our data to any party. So this was for us, it was this is like now the result that's on our website, but just the process of basically writing down this code of ethics was for us already a very, let's say, helpful activity. We worked together with a professor from the UK, Professor Bernd Stahl, who is the director of the Center for Computing and Social Responsibility. And we asked him regularly for feedback. What do you think about this? Where can we improve? But we also engaged in stakeholder dialogues. We talked to labor unions, we talked to NGOs, we showed them the code of ethics, and we asked them, like, is there something that you think we should add? And this also helped us basically to at least start with a set of rules. Obviously, this code of ethics is a work in progress and can be extended let's say continuously, and especially as our product evolves. What is also an important point for us is to contribute to other research projects. And this is also what Georg already mentioned. We are contributing to different research projects. I want to mention two of them. We basically were a case study partner for the EU Sherpa project, which is about shaping the ethical dimensions of smart information systems. And the one where I want to talk a bit more about is a project that is currently ongoing. It's a research project funded by the Austrian Research Agency, FFG. It's actually about developing a technology assessment tool for AI startups. And in this case, we are the industry partners of Austrian AI startups. And we work together with the Institute for Technology Assessment and ITAS in Austria, in Vienna, and FORBA, which is a research agency also here in Austria, focusing on the work life. And what was basically, let's say, the starting point is, on why is it specific to startups? Startups often have very little resources available. It's just completely unthinkable that we will devote several months, that one person can devote several months on focusing on developing standards and guidelines inside our organizations, specifically in the first 3 years of a startup. You're just constantly short of resources. So one specific requirement here was that it's doable in a very short amount of time, and that you then can repeat it. Let's say after a certain amount of time, you can repeat, you can go into depth for certain focus areas that you identified. But it's very important that you can also, if you just apply it in one afternoon, you can take something away that will basically flow into the design of the technology. And that's why the result is, and this is just like a preview, that paper will be published in July in a conference, June, I believe. And it's a modular framework, and it helps basically startups more like a checklist in the beginning, that you can perform a systematic screening of technology risks. Maybe just quickly here summarize the focus areas. So there are 8 technology dimensions, like truth and truth seeking, things like machine ethics, trust and understanding. So there's this 8 different technology dimensions, and the tool in the first module, it basically has a description of each of these technology dimensions and questions that basically trigger the conversation inside the company of that basically for us it meant that we look and reflect on our technology in order to find out, is this something we should focus on, we should work on, are there any risks that there are and that we have to tackle. And so basically each of these technology dimensions has a description, a set of questions, and also scenarios. And that helps. We did this in I think 2-hour workshop together with 4 people from our company. We went through these 8 different dimensions, and what the outcome was basically was a checklist or a list of action items. Actually, we identified, let's say, the most important 5 areas where we should actually do something. Obviously, this is not complete and it's not comprehensive or anything, but it helped us to do as much as we can do in this company, in this phase of the company. And it regularly now influences the way we take design decisions. As an AI startup, we take a lot of decisions every day, actually, how our technology, our algorithms should be designed and should look like. And with having these conversations that we had here in mind, we can just, like make small adaptations to what we actually wanted to build, and in that way make our technology better. Something useful resources that I found during this research project that I just wanted to share. This is not from this project, but something I found during the work here, is this framework Ethical US. So maybe if there's other SMEs or AI startups out there, this is also a very good, let's say, first starting point. It has also a set of risk zones and a checklist where you can just really quickly, in a few hours, identify the most important points where you could potentially spend then some more work on in order to really systematically understand the risks in that area, and also define some action items on what are you going to do about these risks. What were our specific experiences here? That the application of the tool allowed us to systematically scan for risks. This is something that was for us particularly hard because, and I think it's the same for many other startups. Let's say from the first, we are now about 20 employees, but from the first 10 employees, about 9 of them were engineers, with computer science backgrounds. So we're not really trained in understanding societal effects of technology and all these things. Maybe this will change when the education also changes, but right now, this was where we started. And this simple tool really helped us to do a systematic scanning. It was just a support for us on how to do this in the correct way. Interestingly, the workshops also led to very inspiring discussions inside our team because it was just a very different topic. Usually we are talking about technical features, about user expectations and all of this, but we're not really, very often really sat down for a few hours really focusing on the ethical implications. And this was just a very new dimension of thinking, and it really helped us also to generate new ideas on also new features for our customers.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa, for your experience. Unfortunately, your time is up. But yes, thank you also for the clear message for startups to start with to get it right in the first place. We have several. We have 2 questions in the chat. Is there any hope of going beyond social media and detecting risks of attacks to, for example, gas pipelines?
Yes, I mean, we are identifying these risks in the moment they are happening, or some of them also before, when there's risks that usually are visible before that, like bankruptcy risks or labor strikes usually don't happen overnight. But in case of attacks, probably there will be very little public signals before that. And we are working, foremost with public data. So that there's not a big chance that we can identify the attack before it actually happens. But once it happens, we will basically report it in real time, and this is where really let's say a big advantage of Previvis.
And maybe one last question: does your code of conduct blacklist any organizations you wouldn't share data with?
Yeah, that's a good question. We wanted to do that, but it's like really hard for us to draw the line. So that's why right now we have, let's say, a rule there that we will not work together with organizations that have a history of suppressing human rights. But to be honest, just this question on whom to blacklist and whom not, that would be, let's say, an own PhD thesis that is just like really hard for us to achieve. So we started there that we just have this general rule in place, just because of the practical reason on, yeah, it's super hard for us to draw a line here.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Lisa Smith, and I'm sorry that I interrupted you during your presentation.
No, of course.
Yeah. Well, that's the
good.
time for us. Thank you all for your questions, and thank you all for the interesting presentations. I hope this was quite insightful for all the participants here.
And also a big thank you from my side. I really enjoyed it. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to the participants. What happens now at 11 o'clock, so in 3 minutes, the keynotes will start on the main stage. In the afternoon, there will be more workshops. Check out the agenda on the webpage of the B2B Software Days. And tomorrow, there will be B2B meetings again and a couple of other workshops. So take care. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye. Thanks.